Okay, an evaluation question. How does your media product represent social groups? Mainly, let's start with orphans.
So the idea that we had was that Bonnie and Eve would stay at an orphanage for that night or a couple of nights because they're moving into the countryside. And so we really wanted to get kind of the sense of a kind of family inside this orphanage, but they're not related. It's two adults, that would be Richard and Nancy, and they will be looking after the young girls who have sadly been orphaned by their parents. So the idea we had, which would represent their social group, is that they can be really weak, and they need a lot of help because they are so young and they are only girls and they've probably had a really tough life. So to represent that social group, we wanted to have quite a few of them. So we had 6 in the end, I think it was. Different age ranges. So we had little Lexi, and then we had all the way up to about 13, 14 years. So yeah, we wanted to show the different ages. Yeah.
How about the social group of families as a whole in World War Two?
So probably everyone knows that the father would go off to war and that the mother would try and stay at home and look after the children and do her bit for the war. But we wanted to show that Bonnie, after the war, is not going to be that stereotypical mother. She's going to go out there and she's going to look after these children because sadly her daughter is lost in the explosion, as well as Nancy and Richard. And we wanted to show that Bonnie is going to go do the best she can for these 5 girls who she barely knows, and that goes against the stereotype of the housewife of World War II. And we also wanted to show that Eve's father could come home from the war and he no longer has a daughter. So it could also show family life in that way, where both him and Bonnie would have to look after these children and none of them would be related to them. Following on for that, can you please talk about the social group of people who live in the countryside?
Well, as the orphanage that we chose was set mainly in the countryside, we've sort of chosen our characters to be sort of well known from being from there, so that when the siren does go off, it rarely ever happens, if not has never happened before, and so they get sent into a state of panic, not just because they're not used to having to run to the bunker and stuff, but also because it hasn't gone off before, so that they must feel that it is quite serious. But it does show how unfortunate the whole film is, because it could have happened to anyone anywhere, and it is just unfortunate that it's hit the orphanage. And the fact that they have to run out to the bunker or the cellar shows how unprepared they were, because they had to run out to a cellar instead of your normal air raid shelter, which is what most cities have. So actually, in that sense, they're actually more vulnerable than people in the cities, because of how little resources they have when it comes to the air raid siren. So it does conform to that stereotype that people in the countryside don't really know the full effect of what the war is doing back in the cities.
Linking back to the question about families in World War II, can you elaborate on women and their roles in World War II?
Well, before World War II, women were mainly seen as just being sort of housewives, and they didn't really tend to do as bigger jobs or as hard-working jobs as say men would do. But into the war, as you can see here, women did a lot for the war effort. It could be anything from fixing aircraft to working in armory factories and things like that, and they actually had just as big a jobs as the men did. And I think Bonnie conforms to this stereotype that women aren't all that they seem, that they just stay at home and just like be a housewife, because she's having to deal, as many other women do, with the fact that her husband has gone off to war, and not only does she have to look after her daughter in Eve, but she also has to earn money as well. And so she's working but also having to look after Eve as well, and so by being a maid she's earning money, but because her husband is away, Eve is having to stay in the same house. But I do think that she has realised what she has to do in order to get the money and to look after Eve, and so she's really taken it in her stride and shows sort of how powerful women became due to that World War II.
Thank you very much.